Welcome to the Alignment Show, where we talk with people who've made bold moves to live in line with what matters most to them. Life's too short to spend it on things that don't fit. And if you're feeling that pull to realign, you're in the right place. These conversations are here to inspire and support you on your own path. Let's meet today's guest. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world right now. Welcome once again to another episode of The Alignment Show. We haven't had a lot of episodes the last month or so. There's just been so much going on in the household, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But we do have a great episode for you today, great interview, where I'll introduce our guest here in a little bit. But let's catch up on a couple of things first. First of all, I want to remind you about those who make this show possible. We have a couple of sponsors to mention. One of those is SalesWise Live. We talk about them quite a bit here on the Alignment Show. That's because, to me, they are totally aligned with a strong set of values. If you think of sales as being a kind of manipulation or fooling people, that is absolutely not what is going on with the training at SalesWise Live. In fact, it is based on the principles of The Go-Giver, the book that was co-authored by Bob Burg and John David Mann. And these folks, and in fact, one of the people involved in SalesWise Live is Bob Burg. And so they basically teach you how to build genuine relationships. So it's not only lucrative, but it is satisfying, and it makes the world a better place. If you want to find out more about that training that can change your life, whether you're in commissioned sales or not, then take a look at donking.com/saleswise. We will have that link at our show notes, by the way. We'll talk about the show notes in just a moment. But I also want to tell you about another of our sponsors, Val Roskins Tees. Now, that is spelled Tews, but it's pronounced like teas. Val is a content strategy writer who helps authors and coaches get past the stress and the overwhelm of figuring out what to post on LinkedIn. She offers what she calls stress-free content creation. Now, think of that as transformative content support that helps you build a community of readers, potential clients, and even business friends. Now, you might think that people who are authors and coaches and speakers, they work with words all the time. They're going to be pretty good writers all by themselves, right? And they may be good writers in a certain area, but content strategy is a whole different area, and that's where Val's specialty comes in. She helps people share their message with less stress and more joy. Her business is actually called Butterfly Copywriting, and so you can find out more about Val and her work by going to donking.com. Remember, that's Don with a double N, DONNKING.com/butterfly. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention one other sponsor, technically a sponsor, but, it's really me. It's my books. You can find out more at donking.com/books. But what I want to tell you about right now is that I've got a new one that's going to be coming out within a month or so. This one is entitled Creating While Caring, Practical Tips to Keep Creating While You Care for a Loved One. There are over 50 million people in this country alone who find themselves as unpaid caregivers. And among those are people who have had a successful career as writers, photographers, artists, sculptors, all kinds of creative careers out there. And they may suddenly find themselves in a situation where they're responsible for caring for someone. The usual advice about, block out 2 hours at a time and lock the door, tell the family not to bother you, just doesn't work anymore. How do you keep going in that situation? This comes out of our own experience here in our household, which I mentioned when we started out here. So maybe I'll talk a little bit more about our situation later. But right now, I just want to tell you that this resource I wanted to put out there to help people who find themselves in that situation and that aren't quite sure what to do about it. So donking.com/books, and you will find something there about the upcoming book. So with that in mind, let's start to look towards our interview here. Remember that you can always find the show notes, as you will see up here in the corner. If you have trouble reading that, it is simply thealignmentshow.com. That will always get you to the show notes. We have had a change of URL. And if you see some of our recordings, in fact, today's recording still has the old link in it. That will still work, but it's going to direct you over to thealignmentshow.com. So you might as well just go there. If you would like to support the show, you can do so by buying me a coffee. Easy way to do that is buymeacoffee.com/Don King. Remember, that's Don with a double N. Or we're just grateful for you to be a listener. We invite you to subscribe. You can subscribe for free. You can upgrade your subscription for additional benefits. You can share this with a friend. I'm sure you know somebody who would benefit from our examination of how to bring your life into alignment with your values. I also work with a limited number of people to help them bring their books into publication. Got 2 or 3 of those we're working with right now. So all of that makes for, an ongoing, useful impact, I hope. We're just helping people to get their message out there. Now, speaking of messages, our guest today is somebody I've gotten to know through Bob Berg and the related community there, the Go Giver community. Jennifer Pierce has spent nearly 30 years leading high-stakes teams across the financial services and energy sectors before walking away to help others find what she had almost lost, themselves. Jennifer is a certified executive coach and a former global leader. She now helps high-achieving professionals reconnect with purpose, presence, and impact. Her mantra is be the lighthouse, not the tugboat. I love that. And so let's get right into our conversation with Jennifer Pierce. Don? And thank you for that introduction, Don. So we are here talking with Jennifer Pierce, whom I'm still getting to know. I had the privilege of meeting Jennifer Jennifer, 3 or 4 months ago? Hadn't been that long.
January,
yeah. I have such a bad sense of time. But folks, you hear us mention the Go Giver movement here a lot. And so I met Jennifer through that group. And as I have listened to her wisdom in our group, right off the bat, Jennifer, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I think she is very good at what she does, but I also hear maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome sometimes, And so what I'm interested in as we think about our audience here, that there are a lot of people who listen, who are thinking about making changes in their lives, not sure if they should or not sure if they're good enough and all that kind of thing. If I'm hearing some imposter syndrome as you and I talk, one of the things that impresses me is that you do not let that hold you back, and therefore you are serving the world through your unique talents despite that. Does that make sense? Am I reading too much into our interactions, or?
No, you're making me sound much better than I think I am. But all that said, I like your response to that. So yes, of course I have imposter syndrome. I think I don't know of a single person I've ever coached as a coach, or back when I was in corporate. I don't know anyone who doesn't have it to some extent. Some people are just better at hiding it. Mm-hmm. And some people, I don't know that we ever really overcome it. So to me, it's having the courage to live your life anyway. Right. Mm-hmm. And I definitely still, rears its ugly head once in a while, as it did that you noticed with us, Don. So I think, and I don't like to say I coach people on imposter syndrome, because I don't.
That's not the primary thing you do, but
yeah. It's just so, wherever they move on.
How would you describe what you're doing now? And then we're going to go back and dig into the origin stories about what brought you here. But how would you describe the coaching that you do?
So I would say the coaching I do, and it's taken me 4 years to get to be able to say this. I love every client I have. I mean that sincerely. I feel aligned with my clients. I feel like they find me and I find them, and it's a match. And I've learned, to kind of trust that instinct. And what I coach them on is all different things, right? I call myself a leadership coach. That's partly because it's generic enough that it can fit almost anyone. As I like to say, it doesn't matter what your title is. We're
Mhm.
all leaders of our own lives. We all have influence other people, whether or not it's direct in an org chart. If you're in corporate or not, you're still a leader. You're a leader of your family, you're a leader of your community, even if you don't have the title. So I call myself a leadership coach, but the reality is I coach folks who are kind of questioning, as I did, is this it? Is this all there is? I
Mhm.
thought I would be X by this time, or I thought this is what would make me happy, but yet I'm still not. And why might that be? And so when those individuals are ready to do something about it, that's when I feel like I'm a good coach for them.
Okay. Okay. Now, the tagline for this show is living your values to value your life.
Mm-hmm.
Is it fair to say that part of what you're doing is helping people to identify their values, or is it more about they know their values and they just need the encouragement to live them?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Many people who we all talk about values, and then if you actually ask someone, well, what are your values? They'll kind of do the, well, I know it when I see it, or they'll
Mhm.
they'll say something kind of generic, right? But then there are other people who have done the work. There are values exercises that I often give clients if they aren't really sure. Like that's one of the earlier things that we work on is just getting them comfortable with what their values are. So it's one thing to say what your values are. It's another thing entirely to live by those values. And that's where a lot of us get into trouble, I think, sometimes is we make exceptions, right? Or
Mhm. Mhm.
societal pressure, or, oh, I got to pay the mortgage, so I need to stay in this job because if I don't, even though it's not one of my values, but what else am I going to do? So there's a lot of values kind of, feeds into a lot of what we do in coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm wondering about something. And again, folks, by the way, you may hear some noise in the background with Jennifer. I have not heard it since we started recording, but she's not building the house she's living in right now. But there was some jackhammers going on a little earlier. We'll just mention that just in case it comes up.
Thank
Uh,
you.
as a matter of fact, side trip here, folks. We've got in our house, we've got a grandmother clock. Now, that's just a smaller version of a grandfather clock. Hasn't run in years. And the other day I bumped it and it started running again. So if you hear a clock chiming in the background, that's just life. Okay. Um, no, this is something that just occurred to me, Jennifer, because this is conversation, it's live conversation. Um, there is, I think most people know that Donald Trump is president of the United States. He wrote a book some years back called The Art of the Deal. Actually, he didn't write it himself. It was written by a ghostwriter named Tony Schwartz. And Schwartz has basically said he regrets the project. Now, we're not getting into the politics here, but Schwartz is an example of somebody who, even at the time, felt like he was kind of betraying his values. And he's regretted it since. He's made good money from it. He is currently donating any proceeds that he gets from the sale of that book. Um, but he has talked in public, about how it's not that he feels sleazy because of the subject matter, but because he didn't live up to his own values. And so it sounds like maybe some of the folks you're dealing with, it was a very practical question for him at the time. He had two young children, not sure where the money was coming from. There was economic pressure. Do you find that some of your clients are in that situation? I've got this job, I don't really like it, but it pays the bills. How do you, in fact, let's use this to jump into your own origin story a little bit, Jennifer, because you took a leap at one point. What was it you were doing before you were coaching people?
So I spent 27 years in corporate, um, and I was all over corporate. I was one of these meandering people. So I had a marketing degree out of undergrad, but I got a job as a registered representative, kind of like a broker of mutual funds. So I got very interested in the stock market and working in that area, and that led me to an interest in investment banking, where I then was an investment banker for a few years. The good thing about banking, investment banking, is at least back then, you worked so many hours that you didn't have time to think. So you didn't have to think about things like values and purpose. All you were doing was putting one step in front of the other and climbing this ladder that you were pigeonholed into. But it was a good pigeonhole. It was do this for 2 to 3 years, then go to business school while you're at one of the best business schools in the country, because you can only go to certain business schools. Uh, then you're going to go work in private equity for a summer because that's the only way to get into private equity, and that's the next rung on the ladder, et cetera. And so if you don't have time to think and you're not grounded really well at the age of 22, 24, 25 in what it is you do want to do, it gets, I'm using an excuse now, very easy to get swept into that world and not think. And once you get used to not thinking, you don't miss it, right? You
Mhm.
just keep doing. And so I'd like to say that I had several feelings of discomfort over the years, but for the most part, I squelched it down and just kept moving on. I'm very competitive. I don't have a reason to be. That's just how I'm wired. And so I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be number one. I happened to work in mostly male dominated industries. So I was usually one of the only women. So that became another point of, I got to be the best. And eventually I took a big step back, actually, a few times in my career. One time I went from, kind of the investment banking route, mergers and acquisitions. And I had two children, young children by then. And I decided, this is not a great lifestyle because I was gone a lot. So I moved into HR. And let me tell you, that was a really interesting experience because most of the people that I knew in banking completely ignored me from that point on, or were
Hmm.
vocal and said, "What's wrong with you? Like, we thought you were, this whatever, and now we have less respect for you to go into a field like that." And I
Interesting.
always said I like people more than numbers.
Mhm.
So I did it for 9 years, and I found very quickly through three different companies that I worked for in HR that it wasn't so much the company that was the issue, it was the field of HR that didn't align with my values, which were it was all about protecting the company or the corporation and very little. If you had time left over, great, go support those people, the human component. But that wasn't the number one priority from my bosses or the organizations I worked in. So eventually I got disillusioned, took a little bit of a break and reassessed and went back into the business side and then spent the last 10 years of my career working in commodity trading as a leader for a very large oil and gas multinational. And needless to say, there was a lot of that same type of behavior. And just came to the realization after many years that I didn't feel right. I wasn't myself. Who am I? Were a lot of the questions I was asking myself. I
Mhm.
couldn't justify anymore what I was doing. It was never about the money for me. I loved the money, don't get me wrong, but that's not why I was doing it. And I had a little bit of a recalibration, shall we say, brought about by stress and burnout, and kind of an unraveling, which led to me taking a few months of a sabbatical. Where in that sabbatical, I chose to. My mantra became give back, and I felt like I'd been taking. I worked really hard, but I felt like I was always taking and I wasn't being true. I think we're all meant to be servants. I think we're all meant to give to others. And I
Mhm.
didn't understand that at the time, but I went to Nepal and I worked with, I volunteered with an NGO, and really was eye opening, working in a very, very poor country, but seeing people that were very content in many ways, and actually way happier than most of the people I knew in corporate. And it just kind of reaffirmed that I needed to do something different. And that's
Yeah.
how I made the shift over to coaching about 5 years ago now.
Okay. Okay. I love that phrase recalibration. And I'll bet because of the kind of coaching that you do, you probably work with a lot of folks who are at a similar life stage, let's say. Um, uh, we saw that, in the pandemic. In fact, this show, in a way, came out of that because what we kept hearing called the Great Resignation, I thought was the Great Realignment. As
I
people
love that.
realize life is too short. And so it sounds like you went through that, and because of that, um, and it's kind of ironic that you went to Nepal and saw this. The image that I use a lot of time is that of the Sherpa,
Mhm.
which is a very important profession in that part of the world.
Right.
The Sherpa is not just a guide. This is somebody who's been on the path, and they're not going to carry you up the mountain, but they can show you where the loose rocks are and the best way to get up there and all that kind of thing because they've been there. And
I love
so,
that. Oh my
yeah,
gosh, I've never put that together, but that is a beautiful vision of, yeah, you're there to help carry the load a little bit too, maybe, and
yeah.
lead the way, and should not lead the way, show the way, walk beside them, right, and point out the loose rocks, as you said. I really like that.
Hmm. Now, and I've probed this with some other folks that's been on the show. Some of them were therapists and counselors. Some of them were coaches. So just to get your take on this in light of what we were just talking about, a Sherpa may be more interventionist than what a coach is. I'm not sure, but give us a little bit of your thoughts about the difference between a counselor. It's not just licensing differences, although that's a big part of it. Okay, a counselor, a mentor, a Sherpa, coach. Is that worth digging into a little bit?
Absolutely. It's one of the most common questions, especially when I first started out. I feel like coaching has gotten a lot of press and a lot more popular, shall we say, in the last few years, which is a good and a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. But the good thing is, I think people are not, therapy, the basics are therapists, number one, are highly trained, very skilled, go through many years of schooling and have oversight for a long time. But generally speaking, a therapist is more concerned about, figuring out how you got to where you are today. Like, let's explore your past so that we don't repeat it in the future. But it's much more focused on kind of digging deep into your psyche and understanding why you're doing the things that you're doing. Whereas in coaching, we like to say, number one, we are not therapists. Let's be very clear, right?
Mm.
But secondly, we're more concerned about where you're going, not where you've been. So
Ah,
I'm more concerned about your future. And yes, we might delve a little bit if it's part of the story that you need to explain why you are where you are. But my job is to listen and hold space. It's not to fix. It's to, ask the questions. It's to point out things that I notice or see, to give them the little aha moments, but also to help them build that path forward. So it's kind of like in some ways, I'm a cheerleader, right?
mm.
I'm an accountability partner at times. I'm a sage, I'd like to think once in a while of like, hey, did you notice when you said this and when you said that? This is what I heard when you said that. Does that resonate? So
Mm.
so it's a lot more fun. It's not as heavy oftentimes, and I like to think that it's more inspiring because I do care about your future more than your past, right? I'm more interested in your mindset shifts, and that's really what I focus on. Is everything is about your mindset, because whatever you think, your thoughts become your emotions become your actions become, who you are and what you do. So if we can work at that level, it's amazing how we can just kind of blossom.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Um, how would you think in terms of that interventionist thing? I mean, like an athletic coach may suggest a certain stance or something like that. Give it a try, but they're not going to. I don't think. I mean, I've never done athletics, quite honestly, but I don't think they're going to insist that you do it a certain way.
Yeah.
Um, how does that fit with what you're doing with coaching?
Yeah, so there's a very stringent, I'm an ICF certified coach, and when you go through the ICF process, which is amazing, it really is, it's well worth it. But they're loosening up a little bit, but it's fairly regimented that the client has all the answers. And your job as a coach is to help them recognize that the answers are within, which I love in theory.
Mm-hmm.
In practice, oftentimes there'll be a lot of frustration from the clients if they're like, but I want you to help me or give me some ideas. I don't know the answer. That's why I hired you, right? So kind of like a sports coach, right? If you think of like, oh, I need to improve my baseball swing, I'm going to go hire a swing coach. I would think that the swing coach is going to put their hands on you and say, hey, do it this way or try it this way. They're not going to tell you to do it, but try it and see if it feels comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of view that sometimes in coaching where you put on, you take off your coaching hat, and I'll even say, okay, this is no longer coaching. This is now advising or consulting, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're asking my opinion. You're asking my advice. Well, in my experience, I have tried this and it may have worked. What do you think? But it's not, I'm not going to say, hey, did you do your homework last week? Oh, you didn't do that. Shame on you. That's not
Coaching. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There are two comparisons that are coming to mind right now. One, as I've already established, I don't know much about athletics, but I've always followed anybody in any profession who has achieved, well. There is a fairly famous, I think he died not too long ago. His name was Doug Blevins. He was a kicking coach. And he's never kicked a football in his life because he was born with cerebral palsy. Because of that, he got really interested in the mechanics of how people move. He was very good at observing. And he coached 3 record-breaking field goal kickers, worked for the Miami Dolphins, that kind of thing. So this is sort of the opposite of the Sherpa. He's not been there himself. He's just really good at observing and mirroring back. The other comparison, and I think you and I are close enough in age for this one. You remember the original Karate Kid with Mr. Miyagi, and all that? Okay, Miyagi had, and I don't even remember the character's name, but, had Ralph Macchio,
Danny.
Wax on, wax off. And he doesn't explain to him why he's having him do that. He thinks he's just doing Mr. Miyagi's chores. So that's a really directive thing. And Miyagi is doing that from his own experience. But this is beyond Sherpa, because he's telling him what to do. So with that range there, okay, you're talking about the different hats. Sometimes it's the coaching hat where you're asking questions, helping them to find their own answers. Sometimes it's the consultant. That's one of the terms I haven't thrown out there yet. You're constantly switching those modes, I take it, depending on what the client seems to need. Now, so this is a complicated question, but I think it's setting up something that really sheds some light on this. Sometimes the client has no idea what they need. You may sense it and you see it within them. So going beyond asking questions, what else do you do to help them find their own answers as opposed to just imposing the Jennifer Pierce method?
Yeah, I don't have a Jennifer Pierce method. I wish I did. And I could, you see these people that market it and $49, go through my 3-week course and that's not me. That's not what I do. Sometimes I wish I did do that because it's like, oh, that'd be much easier. No, so what I do is the answer is being present, right? So that the biggest gift, I think, no matter how much money or how little money you have, the one truth is we're all going to die at some point and we all have a limited, amount of time. So if I spend time with someone, that's a gift, right? And if they spend time with me, that's a gift. But it's not a gift if they're multitasking. I don't feel seen, right? And so my biggest gift that I can give others is my undivided attention. And it's amazing. When you give someone undivided attention, even if it's just for a minute or two or a few seconds of an exchange, I'm very spiritual and I believe that you're exchanging energy with that person in consciousness to some extent. And so the more that I can be present and see them and feel them and hear them and really, really listen, I don't know how I do it. I think it just comes from being a better and better listener. And the more I do it, the more comfortable I get with my skills to have less of the imposter syndrome and more of the, I don't think, I just react based on what that individual is doing. And then when the mechanics part of it, going back to Mr. Miyagi, believe me, there are times where I have a couple clients where I'm like, we've talked about this before, and I'm trying to be patient. Like, did you ever try that? Do you remember a few weeks ago? I'm not sure if you ever had a chance to, would you like to talk about that again? Like, I want to be Mr. Miyagi and say, just do what I told you to do. I really like doing that, but I know that with my own children, it doesn't always work that well. So what I've found is, I started this in March of 2020. I've got this spreadsheet. And it's got over 500, I could look it up, but over 500, probably over 600 cells in it now of different tools that I use in my tool belt. Okay. And when I say tools, that makes it sound really smart. What it is divided out by maybe 10 different broad categories and another 20 subcategories. And it's everything from articles to websites to quizzes to books to short videos to documentary movies. And when I work with someone, one of the first questions I ask once we agree that we're going to work together is I have them rank, what's your learning style? And they look at you like, I don't know. I say, okay, well, rank for me real quickly, top of your head, order of preference, a podcast, a short article, a book, or a TED Talk video. And people are pretty good at telling you right away what they prefer based on time or interest or anything else. And I just use that as a little tool to say, okay, if I'm working with someone and I do want to I always ask permission, would you like me to give you some tips or tricks that you can practice over the next couple of weeks? And then I'll go to my tool shed and pull out on my, hey, I'm looking for this or that or whatever. And I'm constantly adding, because every time I see something interesting, I just throw it right in that spreadsheet. So I've built up this pretty big library of curated resources, as they say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just that whole idea of curation, thanks to the internet or whatever, the problem now is not information. The problem is filtering information. So I could see where that would be part of that Sherpa thing, the curation. While I'm thinking of the next question, by the way, we do have video component here, obviously, and I've just had the show notes going on the crawl. For folks who want to find out more about Jennifer and what she does, you can always go to confidencecultivators.com and follow the links that we will have there, especially for the audio only folks. If you're just hearing this, confidencecultivators.com. Not sure which episode this will be, but it'll be linked by episode number. Also, let's say out loud, Jennifer, and then when we actually do the broadcast, I'll make sure that I get it in there on the crawl for folks to be able to see it. In fact, I'll get a QR code up there. Ooh, but if folks want to know more about you, let's go ahead and put that out there. Where should they go to learn more?
So probably the easiest way is just to go to my website, which is jenpiercecoaching.com. So JEN, P as in Peter, IERCE, coaching.com. Or I'm on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. It's the one social media that I prefer. And it's Jennifer Pierce 1020 is my call name or whatever you want to call it on LinkedIn. But I would love to connect. And my favorite thing to do, frankly, is exactly this, what Don and I are doing. I will spend 45 minutes with absolutely anyone, anytime. I'm not great at time management. That's one thing that I always heard in my corporate days. And unfortunately, now that I'm a solopreneur, oh boy, I don't have a boss telling me to manage myself. And I do fall down that trap. But I got to say, it's what brings me joy. And it's always about just getting to know interesting people. And I love the fact that I started coaching during the pandemic, because if I would have gotten my coaching certification even a year earlier, I would have had to adjust to being on Zoom to do coaching. Now, even my local quote clients, I live in South Florida, I've had 3 local clients over the years. That's it. Everything else is over Zoom. And I love it. And sometimes it's just over the phone, right? I mean, some people don't like to be on camera, which is fine, but But to me, it's just opened up a whole new world that you can connect with like-minded people and find that energy from someone else just by having a quick chat. So even if you're not looking for a coach, I like to chat.
Okay, very good. So again, we'll get those links in the show notes, but Jennifer Pierce 1020 on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Okay. And we'll get that into a QR code as well. And then the website, Jen Pierce, and Jen is with one N.
One N.
Yeah, Jen.
Dawn is with two N's, as we just talked about. Jen is with one N. Although some people do spell it with two N's. So thanks.
Yeah. So you've got to make it a little more confusing here.
Absolutely.
Okay. So looking back 20 years, I'm having trouble forming this question. Your corporate experience was valuable.
Yes.
If you had made this leap instead of 4 or 5 years ago, 20 years ago, obviously the life would have been very different.
Yeah.
What are the chances that at this point, after 20 years of coaching, you might be questioning if you would still want to do it or not?
Wow, that's not where I thought you were going on that. Firstly, let me just say there's no way I could have been a coach 20 years ago because there's just no way, right? What led me to this point is part of the whole story and what makes me, I think, living my purpose right now, right? I think all of that was built up to this. 20 years from now, gosh, I'm turning 54 this year, so I fully expect I will still be coaching in 20 years because I'm not planning on retiring until, I'm dead. So I've never thought about it. So that is a great question, Don. But my gut reaction is, this is it.
This is it. Yeah.
I get so much joy out of help, not even helping, supporting, learning about, going on a journey with whatever words you want to use. It fills me up. I mean, it's being in flow, right? Like I'm sure you've talked about this before. Like, how do you know the alignment show, right? How do you know you're aligned? It's when time passes and you don't realize it and you don't feel exhausted at the end of the day. Right? So
that's a good
if
indicator.
I work 12 hours doing what I love doing, I'm energized still at the end of the day. If I work 12 hours doing a corporate job that I was just getting through to collect a paycheck, I've done it. I know how it feels, and it doesn't feel the same way.
That's a lot of times when I find people who are in their second or third career, which I think you and I both kind of fit that. A step back question is to say, what is the thread that ran through all of them? This kind of helps get at the values thing, and realizing that there was a lot about at least some of those corporate jobs where this is what I'm doing to pay the rent. There was something within that was still feeding your soul to some degree. It helped you to come to where you are right now. Do you see a thread through all the stuff that you did? I'll give you a hint here. One of the things I heard you talking about was you went into HR thinking you would be able to help people.
Yep.
And you found out that you mostly had to protect the corporation, but it sounded like you got your greatest joy out of when you could help people. So do you see a thread like that through all that you're doing?
I wasn't planning on going there, but I feel like I'm meant to, based on this question. Yes, maybe it was helping people, and I did always feel like no matter what job I was in, that's probably why I worked as many hours as I did, because anytime anyone came to me on my team or not even on my team and wanted help, I always stopped what I was doing to help them, right? And I would spend way too much time, one would argue, helping people instead of getting my work done, which is why I ended up working a lot. But so the short answer is yes, it's helping people. But the longer answer is, and I am going to share this because it's a revelation I had very, very recently. Very, very recently. And I've only said it out loud once before. And it was to a small group of people. And I'm practicing with you, if that's okay, sharing something that means a lot. My parents were divorced when I was 3, or not divorced. They separated when I was 3, got divorced when I was 6. But I hadn't seen my biological father since I was 18, and that was by his choice, not mine, for a whole host of reasons. And so from the time I was 18 until I was about 46 or 47, I had kids, I got married, I kept trying to re-engage with him, and I didn't know where he was. But then the internet came out, so I was able to find him, and just wanted nothing to do with me. And then one day in December of 2016, I was working late, and I was in the back of an Uber about 9 o'clock at night on a Wednesday night, and I had my phone out, and for whatever reason, I did it every couple of years. I Googled my dad's name, and his obituary came up.
Wow.
And the obituary was 6 months old at that point. And it's hard, like, it's like a freeze frame moment. I'm in the back of this Uber, and it was like the emotions. I didn't think I'd have any emotions. I haven't seen the guy in 30 years, right? I mean, but it was really, really hard for me. And I squelched it down like I always do, and just kept on working. And I got a promotion the next year, and I moved to London as an expat in this really big job. And it was like the pinnacle of my career, and things just started slowly unraveling around me. I keep using the word unraveling because that's how it felt. It was slow and steady, but it kept going. Mm-hmm. And I finally came to through therapy, conclusion that all those years I was just trying to get my dad to notice me, right? So if I make a lot of money, if I have a big job, if I do this, if I do that, then maybe he'll re-engage with me, right? And then once I found out he was dead, and it's like no one notified me or anything, 6 months later, it's like, well, wait a minute. Now, what am I doing? Am I doing this for me, or am I doing this for some phantom approval that is now never going to come? And it forced me through a very painful path. I mean, making it sound like it wasn't a big deal. It was a huge deal of, well, who am I really, right? And so to the thread in all of this, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think I've always been more of a, nice, helpful, kind, whatever. But I became this very hardened on the outside. I just didn't like who I was anymore, right? I didn't like the person I had become. And I'd like to say that now at the age of 53, I'm happier than I have ever been in my entire life. And people around me that have known me for years are like, you seem so different and so light. And so like, what is it? And it's like, I'm living my values, right? I'm living who I was meant to be. And it's really cool.
Excellent. That is wonderful to hear. And just the self-awareness that comes with that. I think so many people will just continue to do what you said a moment ago. That is just squelch it down. Just
we get really good at that, don't we?
Yeah. And that's very human, because if I bring that out and I confront that, it may mean that I have to make changes.
Right.
And that takes effort.
Change is scary, right?
Change is scary. It takes effort. You don't know what the outcome's going to be. I might try to change and fail. At least, as people, not judging anybody else, but we all know folks who will stay in a bad relationship because at least it's a known situation.
Devil, Yeah. Same thing in corporate, right? Like, well, at least I know what the flaws are here. At least I'm already here, so I'll just suck it up and keep doing it, right?
Yeah. It could, if I make changes, it could be wonderful. On the other hand, it could be horrible. So, yeah. Wow. All righty then. Well, as we're coming to a close in our conversation today, I always like to ask people. I'm always a generalist, talking to somebody who's a specialist in some fashion. There may be something that you wish that I had asked that I didn't. What do you wish I had asked? And then what would your answer to that be?
Oh my goodness. Don, I should have known this was coming and I didn't, and you've caught me flat-footed. I'm not sure there's anything. I guess the one thing, and I touched on it a little bit, and maybe given your background, Don, I know we haven't known each other very long, but for your audience, I am in a very special group that I am so grateful to be in with Don and some other folks. And I know that Don is a pastor, and I don't even know what religion or what sector. I don't know anything. I know you live in Tennessee and you're a pastor.
Yeah.
For me, I guess the question maybe, I don't know that I'm glad you didn't ask maybe, but I was very I was Catholic for many years, and I very involved in my church and loved the ceremony and loved the it just was very comforting to me in many
Mhm.
ways. And I've become much more, I hate to use the word spiritual because that sounds woo woo, but I've become much more not religious focused, but people focused in the sense of I
Mhm.
don't care what religion you are. I don't care if you have any religion.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
care if you believe in God or not, because in my heart of hearts, I know that we're all connected. And
yes.
it took me a really long time to have that epiphany for myself. And as soon as I had that epiphany and I start living my life as less about us versus them and more about how we're all the same and we're all just going through difficult times, I found I am less judgmental. I'm still judgmental, of course, but I'm much less judgmental than I used to be. And so for me, if there's one thing that I would like to leave people with is it doesn't matter how old you are, you can always shift your mindset to being more open and connected and positive and just do goodwill for other people. And I think it comes back to us. And a
Mhm.
pastor certainly, like Pastor Don here, certainly lives those values from what I've seen the last 3 months. And I'm just so grateful that I got this opportunity to talk with you. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. It's been great having you on here. I'll just a couple of comments in relation to that. I've often heard, and I think this makes a lot of sense, that religion is for people who want to avoid hell. Spirituality is for people who've already been there. You know, and there's a lot of truth to that. A lot of truth to that.
Yeah. Okay.
And since I am older, you may or may not know who Ram Dass was.
Rob, what's his last name?
The first name is spelled RAM, Ram.
Oh, Ram Das.
Okay.
Oh, of course,
Ram
he
Dass.
died. He died a couple of years ago, right?
2 or 3 years ago. Yeah. So you
He was
know who I'm
around.
talking about here.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
wrote a book that was famous back in the 60s, and they reissued it not too long ago called Be Here Now. Okay. So
Yes.
he was sort of, I had a feeling, um, sort of an Americanized version of Hinduism.
Yeah.
But the thing that I always remember from Ram Dass, and I've shared this quote with a lot of other people, he said that we're all just walking each other home.
Oh,
And to me, that has been such an impactful kind of statement.
I
So,
love that.
yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
So, and I appreciate that. I can see where you bring that into your coaching. It's not a specific. You got to believe X, Y, Z, or whatever. It's the connection.
Yeah.
So, appreciate that so much. Well, folks, we will have in the show notes again, confidencecultivators.com. If you're hearing this on audio only, you can always find all the links that we would talk about here. Um, Jennifer, let's see, JenPierceCoaching.com. I want to say that out loud. Okay. And then Jennifer Pierce 1020 to look for that on LinkedIn. And we'll have links to all of those in our show notes. So, Jennifer, thank you so much for this conversation. Quite honestly, this is the reason that I keep doing this podcast. It gives me an opportunity to have conversations with people I wouldn't otherwise get to talk with. And this has been a delight. Thank you.
Ditto right back at you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Fascinating conversation with Jennifer. I'm really enjoying getting to know her deeper, and she continues to impress me. I'm sure that um, her situation, her growth, her journey will be an encouragement to you in your own journey. Be sure and check out her website. You can always find the links that we talked about in the episode by going to thealignmentshow.com. Wherever it is that you are listening to this or watching this, I would encourage you to subscribe, share it with somebody. Be sure and hit the like button if it's one of those things. You know the drill, but that really does help other people to find it. In any case, I appreciate you spending time with us here on this episode. I'm not 100% sure who is coming up next or even exactly when it will go out, but we are working on things here at the Alignment Show to see what our direction will be going forward. 90-something episodes by the time you see this. So by the time we hit episode 100, we're going to be taking a look at the future. In any case, Join us once again on the next episode of The Alignment Show, and we hope for the opportunity to help you to live your values so you can value your life. That's a wrap for this episode of The Alignment Show. What's your next step? Whatever came up for you, take action. Talk it out with a friend or just sit with it for a moment. And if this episode sparked something meaningful, share it with someone you care about. You can subscribe and find all past episodes at thealignmentshow.com. And be sure to follow or leave a review wherever you heard or watched this. It really helps more folks find the show. We'll be back soon with another thoughtful conversation. Until then, live your values and value your life.